implying that he's not picking up his phone at all and not talking to anybody. So we'll see. We'll go there to another quarterback who's even in a worse situation in that division. That is Baker Mayfield. Mike, what can you tell us about his circumstances and wanting to no longer be with the Browns?
Yes, well, we heard the Cleveland Browns, who now have Deshaun Watson, obviously, say that they would like to wrap up this Baker Mayfield situation as soon as possible. The problem is there's a lot of money on that contract, and the next team is basically going to bring in a guy who's either going to compete or sit behind somebody else. So are you really going to pay that person $18+ million? So that's why we're kind of in a standoff between Baker Mayfield and the Browns. What I am told is that he is throwing with a couple of veteran receivers in Cole Beasley and Danny Amendola down in Texas, and also Alex Bachman, the one guy out of the group who does have a job. He's currently with the New York Giants as a wide receiver on a futures deal. So Mayfield continuing to get the work in. I would expect that that's the way it's going to continue until the situation with the Browns resolves itself. I wouldn't imagine he'll go back to Cleveland for the spring session. As for Beasley, just mentioned Cole Beasley there. I do want to double back on him because he's still a free agent. And I thought, you know, he'd have a lot of interest. He does have interest, but my understanding is he's looking for the right deal and the right situation. So he is being patient. But I did ask around the league, I said, does this guy still have something left? And they said, well, yeah, the first half of the season, he did. And he averaged 9.6 catches for the first half of the season, 7.2 on the back end. And they said, well, that was after he got hurt. So I actually called his agent, Justin Turner, and I said, was he affected down the stretch? And Turner said, yeah, he was. He had 3 broken ribs. They never really healed, so it affected his mobility. So that's why he wasn't that dynamic of a playmaker, but feels good about where he is right now, getting in that work with Baker Mayfield, hoping to sign a deal with a team in the near future, a lucrative deal in the right spot, Patrick.
Yeah, really good season a couple of years ago, and then you mentioned the start to 2021. We'll see what the future has in store for Cole. And now, Mike, let's talk about Jimmy Garoppolo, because Kyle Shanahan said yesterday, we're not going to get rid of a good player just because we have another quarterback on the roster. What does the CEO have to say about Jimmy G?
Yeah, Jed, you're kind of echoing that as well. And the indications from the 49ers are that they're willing to have Jimmy Garoppolo back. They trust that it won't be an awkward situation. They're not just going to get rid of him. I do believe that the intention will be, even with Garoppolo on the roster, to see if they can get Trey Lance ready for the season. If he's ready to go, Garoppolo will be there. There'll be a little bit of pressure on Lance. But you know what? Playing quarterback in the NFL is a pressure position anyway. So you don't have to worry about whether or not the guy's going to fold. Matter of fact, you probably want to see if he's going to fold before he steps on the field as your full-time starter. So we'll see about that. You also have the possibility of a Sam Bradford type situation where another quarterback gets hurt and then you've got someone to trade. But I do know this notion that Garoppolo got the surgery, didn't tell the Niners about it, and was, you know, trying to do that to stay in San Francisco. Not the case. The Niners knew about the surgery ahead of time. Actually would have been a breach of his contract, Patrick, to have a surgery and not tell the team about it. So you could put that one to rest.
Yeah, most people, in terms of reconstructive surgery on the insides of their body, they don't do it for fun. It's not something that generally happens. Mike Garafolo with the latest look around the league.
Under center is Mac Jones. Takes the handoff and throwing. Complete. No, it's picked off. Picked off by Malcolm Jenkins, and that is going to be a touchdown for Malcolm Jenkins. And Malcolm Jenkins knows how to find the end zone. And wow, that was fast.
That is a wrap on the great career of two-time Super Bowl champion Malcolm Jenkins, who says he's grateful. 13 seasons, my time on the football field has come to an end. I'm just a boy from Piscataway who through this game became a champion in the sport, a champion for the people. My time on the field may be over, but I'll never stop fighting for the people. A nod to his activism that has been such a big part of his career over the past few years. The Dallas Cowboys have seen some notable guys depart. The most notable one, a guy with 6 Pro Bowls, wide receiver Amari Cooper, traded to the Browns. Randy Gregory didn't get the offer he wanted in Dallas, so he goes to Denver, and La'el Collins is now a Cincinnati Bengal, a part of rebuilding that offensive line. So let's discuss as we look at a couple of other guys, right, in terms of Connor Williams and Ced Wilson, both going to the Miami Dolphins. All these departures from the Dallas Cowboys going to the AFC. Well, let's talk about the team playing in the NFC. We'll bring in Jane Slater. And looking ahead, not looking back at what's been lost, Jane, what's the draft strategy for the Joneses here in 2022?
Well, and you said it right there, Patrick. The mentality from Jerry Jones, at least if you listen to owners meetings, seemed to be looking ahead. And he all but laid out his draft plans on night one by telling us that unless there was a CeeDee Lamb or a Micah Parsons there, expect him to go offensive line. Now, you can do that given how successful they've been in the draft in recent years. Micah Parsons, obviously a big pickup for them. And then Amari Cooper, they felt that CeeDee Lamb was doing such a good job behind him that they were able to offload his deal. But let's talk about that offensive line. You know, you saw La'el Collins end up going to Cleveland, and while that was sort of expected, although I think a lot of us around here thought, why not see if he can't play another position? They offload his deal, they got rid of him, and now they've got to figure out what to do with this offensive line. Now, you could argue the center position's still a little shaky, although they feel like Tyler Biadasz is coming along. I have never heard them talk about a player the way they talk about Terrence Steele. This was La'el Collins' backup. They think he's smart. They think that he's done a really good job over there at right tackle, but you've also got to consider, what do you do with left tackle Tyron Smith? He's had some more injuries in recent years. And so when you hear Jerry Jones talking about drafting offensive linemen, that's a good thing. In fact, I have a hard time believing that they drafted Tyron Smith, was one of their first offensive linemen since 1981 that they'd taken in the first round. In 2011, that's how long he's been in Dallas. After that, they followed it up with Zach Martin in 2013 instead of going after Johnny Manziel. It was Travis Frederick. And then, of course, then you had Zach Martin in lieu of Johnny Manziel. All of those picks worked out for them. I think a lot of Cowboy fans and people around here would love to see him do it again. And you certainly have some quality guys. When you look at guys like Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M, or even Zion Johnson out of Boston College.
Yeah, it's easy to make the case for some of these departures when you recognize how much success Dallas has had in the first round in recent years, Jane. But over on the defensive side of the ball, they also got to replace Randy Gregory now. How are they going to go about that?
I had to laugh a little bit when we heard Jerry Jones's explanation of how that whole thing went down. I was told it was pretty contentious, even leading up to Randy Gregory getting on the plane heading to Denver. They had reached out, tried to still make things work, but he said El Paso. In other words, he had decided that he was going to pass on Randy Gregory. He said he wished him well, but they do need to figure out what to do there. Now, keep in mind, they locked in their left defensive end into Marcus Lawrence, the new 3-year deal. They signed Dante Fowler, who reunites with Dan Quinn. He will likely get the nod over there on the right side. And they've got guys like Terrell Basham, Dorrance Armstrong, and Chauncey Golston, who can sort of backfill there. But I think that they're going to need a little bit more depth at that position. And then let's talk about the kicker position. They've got a punter, but they've only got one kicker on this roster, and this was the only team in the league last year that gave up 6 field goals and 6 extra points. They have got to do something with that, but I anticipate that they will likely do that through free agency or later in the draft. Keep in mind, they've got a lot of these mid-round picks, thanks to compensatory picks and things along those lines.
Yeah, so it's something to get the people excited about, getting a kicker in, considering the departures in Dallas. And you have to be confident in their capacity to fill that roster of contenders for the past few years. Jane Slater with the latest on the Dallas Cowboys and their 2020.